5, 4. Main engine start.
August 4th, 2007.
Liftoff of the Delta II rocket with Phoenix.
A rocket leaves Earth carrying a spacecraft on a suicide mission to Mars. The passenger? A robot geologist headed for the Martian Arctic. The hope? That Phoenix will unlock the mysteries of life on Mars. This is the inside story of its harrowing journey as it happens from the control room and from Mars itself. Landing day, 12:30 p.m. The spacecraft is minutes away from touchdown on Mars.
I can't take it either.
Landing leg deployment and radar power up.
One of the team leaders, Peter Smith, watches the live feed from Mission Control.
Power descent is only about 40 seconds in duration. There it goes. The AGC's rolling off.
This mission could reveal the mysteries of life on Mars. Careers are at stake.
Copy that. At this point, the lander should be resting safely on the surface for flight.
Oh, come on, let's see it.
But something is wrong.
Still have not seen any signal.
For whatever reason, and we're far enough off to be.
The truth slowly dawns on everyone.
We're certainly not seeing it.
Okay, for everybody in PL, we're gonna have a team meeting down there, so.
The lander has smashed into the surface.
Oh, I feel terrible. What do we do now?
Confirm process separation.
9 years have passed since the Mars Polar Lander disaster. Now, Peter Smith faces this terrifying moment once more, this time with the Phoenix lander.
We lost our chance with Polar Lander, and now we've got another chance. Phoenix is coming back from the ashes.
Peter Smith has taken on this crusade, determined that Phoenix will succeed where Polar Lander failed. He's staking his career on the hope that Phoenix could find signs of life on Mars. He is the principal investigator, and he's brought some of the Polar Lander team back for one last shot at redemption.
We're trying to get back to those days of a successful landing and the thrill of adventure that surrounds new science and landing in a new place on Mars.
Some scientists speculate that life could have existed on Mars in the past, and may still. If true, Phoenix could unveil the first evidence of life on another planet. But all missions must begin this search by seeking one fundamental element.
Following the water has been a NASA mantra for many years.
Where there's water, there's a chance for life. With this understanding, the space program has sent an entire fleet to Mars, searching for water. Some of these missions have revealed promising clues.
Well, life could certainly have existed on Mars in the distant past, because we know at that time there was water. We could see the remnants of old lakes. We could see the remnants of river valleys and all kinds of things that say water was here.
But billions of years ago, a mysterious cataclysm destroyed the planet's atmosphere, and the water vanished. What happened to it remains a mystery scientists still puzzle over. Back in 2002, the Mars Odyssey orbiter stumbled upon a chance discovery as it peered down at the planet. What it found changed the game of finding life on Mars. Odyssey's spectrometer uncovered a region with huge quantities of hydrogen under the surface, indicated by the color blue. Scientists believe this hydrogen is attached to oxygen, H2O, water, most likely in the form of subsurface ice.
This map was created by an instrument on the Odyssey orbiter. In the upper 3 feet of surface, you can find regions of a water abundance that you can see in no other way because the surface is covered in soil, and that is totally unexpected.
If Phoenix lands, it will provide hard evidence of water on the planet. Is this the water NASA has been looking for? Could this ice have ever harbored life?
And so is the amount of ice that made this discovery so unusual. That's why we wanted to investigate it right away. And our mission was conceived at the discovery point of that ice, and now, 6.5 years later, we're following up on that discovery.
Phoenix is a robot geologist equipped to identify water on Mars. The mission is groundbreaking. Phoenix will dig beneath the surface, analyze the ice and soil, and search for evidence of life. If successful, Phoenix could shift our understanding of life itself. The mission is monumental. The personal and professional stakes are huge. Sending a mission to Mars once more is important not just for science, but also for the team's redemption.
If the first one failed, you really want that second one to succeed because the amount of blood, sweat, and tears is so daunting that you just never want to have to go through that a third time. My God, I don't think anybody could do it. So a huge success would vindicate all those years leading to Polar Lander.
Mars Polar Lander is not the only wreckage on the Red Planet. Over half of all attempts to land on Mars have ended in failure.
Landing on Mars is so risky. You really need a payoff to balance that risk. Phoenix advances the search for life by a very large step forward.
Will Phoenix make it to Mars? The search for life is on the line.
I feel like my heart's on the spacecraft. We're just ready for the excitement to start.
Atmospheric entry on my mark.
This is a day we will never forget.
3, 2, 1.
Mars is a frozen, hostile wasteland. Dust storms rage across the planet. Temperatures plummet 250 degrees below freezing. It seems an unlikely place for water, let alone life. But could the basic elements of life exist here, even in this merciless environment? Phoenix is on its way to find out.
If you consider Mars an extreme environment, then the question is that extreme environment inhabited? Was there any life on Mars that could evolve to that extreme environment?
To inform the search for life on other planets, scientists observe how life adapts to the harshest regions on Earth. In frozen tundra, in the driest deserts, one can still find tough little organisms called extremophiles. Astrobiologist Chris McKay is an expert on extremophiles. He's discovered them in Earth's most unforgiving places. Some closely resemble the extreme conditions on Mars. He is co-investigator on Phoenix.
As we move into the hills, we find scenes like this. Rocks, red rocks, really Mars-like. Here we find one of my favorite examples of desert extremophiles. Organisms living under stones in deserts. They're cyanobacteria. They're green. They photosynthesize. They need light, but they also need water. Living under a stone is a way that they get a little wetter, more shielded environment. But they have to grow under stones that allow light to come through. And about 1% of it reaches where these organisms are living, and that's enough light for them to grow. It's an example of how life has found a strategy to survive in an area that looks lifeless. We need to be on the lookout for that on Mars. Maybe extremophiles were able to make a living in a surprisingly inhospitable place right where Phoenix is landing 5 million years ago when it was just a little bit warmer than it is today.
Even in deserts like these, life can exist if there are 3 essential elements: energy, water, and something called organics. Organics are carbon-based molecules that form all biological matter.
life before it existed was organic materials, and they had to form the right chemical chains and molecules in order to create living creatures.
Mars has energy from the sun. If Phoenix identifies water ice and uncovers organic materials, all the elements for life are there. And if all the elements are there, is life there as well?
If Mars was inhabited by some sort of biology early in its history, and then it slowly dried out, the pools of water shrinking, you know, the water seeping underground, did the life forms evolve quickly enough to follow the water?
If someone were to go to Mars and land on the surface, they'd see a terrain like this. No evident sign of life, evidence that there was water and it's now gone. When Phoenix lands on Mars, it's going to look out onto a surface that's also going to have cracks due to the ice below the ground. Phoenix is going to dig underground at the landing site on Mars and search the dirt and the ice that it's going to encounter for evidence of organic material that could be the result of past life. We might find there a different type of life, life that represents a second genesis. So right here in our own solar system, we might have two examples of life. And I'm looking forward to that day, and that day may come from exploration of Mars.
If there are organics hidden under the Martian surface, Phoenix will be able to sniff them out with a soil analyzing instrument called TIGA. Heather Enos is the project manager for this crucial instrument.
TIGA stands for Thermal and Evolved Gas Analyzer. TIGA is a very complex machine. It has given me gray hair. You can't see it, but it's there.
TIGA is a hot little oven for cooking gases out of the Martian soil.
So this is the TIGA that we've used here on Earth to practice for what we're going to do on the surface of Mars. And in this part of the instrument is where the soil gets dumped. We heat it to a variety of different temperatures and we cook the soil to get the gases to come off. Same as when you're boiling a pot of water, when it goes from cold to hot and it bubbles, you start to see the gases come off. And those are indicative of what is inside the water or the soil.
If carbon-based molecules exist in the Martian subsurface ice, TIGA will find their organic signatures in the gases. These gases could literally be the smoking gun for life on Mars.
Living organisms undergo a decomposing process. One of the major things they leave behind is carbonates. And so if you're able to detect carbonates in the soil, that gives you an indication that there were living organisms.
TIGA is tested over and over again. The team can't afford any failure.
Right now, our oven is about 440 degrees C.
We'll continue to ramp this to 1,000 degrees.
A subtle shift in a digital readout could reveal the clue they're looking for. If organic molecules are there, they don't want to miss them. Heather lost her opportunity to make that discovery back in 1999.
I unfortunately have seen the loss of a mission before, and in Mars Polar Lander, I was on the TIGA-1 team.
Phoenix carries TIGA-2. It's Heather's second chance for success.
Your first impulse when you have a failure like Mars Polar Lander is, I am never doing this again. But on the other hand, when you've got it in your blood and you want to do exploration, and you actually have to turn it around as an opportunity.
Second chances are very rare in this business. The TIGA team has put their professional and personal commitments on the line one last time. It all boils down to 7 minutes of terror. It will take 7 minutes for Phoenix to decelerate from nearly 13,000 miles an hour to a soft touchdown on Mars. This time, the pre-planning, the engineering, the timing, all of it must pay off. The 7-minute sequence is called EDL, for entry, descent, and landing. And it must be perfect. Entry, for 2 gut-wrenching minutes, Phoenix burns as hot as the sun as it hits the Martian atmosphere. Descent, a parachute deploys and breaks Phoenix's velocity to 150 miles an hour. Landing, rocket thrusters fire, bringing Phoenix to a soft touchdown. At some point in this sequence, the earlier Mars Polar Lander failed and crashed. If Peter Smith and his team don't find out why, Phoenix just might meet the same fate.
As the principal investigator, you take ultimate responsibility for every part. If we have anything to prove, it's that old technology that goes back 15 years is still able to do its task.
This time around, the engineers had to comb through the sequence of events that led to the loss of the Mars Polar Lander. They had to find and exorcise the ghosts in the machine. Any overlooked flaw could come back to haunt them. The technological conscience of this effort is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory's chief engineer, Gentry Lee. Success for Phoenix depends on staring the Polar Lander failure in the face and learning from those mistakes.
From the very beginning, everyone associated with Phoenix has realized that this is a crapshoot. And Phoenix became a real project. The first thing that I did was I walked into the director's office and I said, okay, if we want to have a reasonable probability of success, we have to do analysis of approach, entry, descent, and landing like it's never been done before. Otherwise, we are not going to succeed.
There is reason to worry. The Phoenix project cost $457 million. That's a lot, but nothing compared to the billions of dollars most Mars missions cost. To fly on this small budget, the Phoenix team must recycle an older, canceled vessel based on the same design as the failed Mars Polar Lander.
It was like saying, okay, I want to build a car. I can't afford to build a brand new car, so I'm going to go first to the parts place and see if I can find some things that I can make into a spacecraft.
This Phoenix must rise, not from the ashes, but from a pile of spare parts and discarded hardware.
The key to flying a mission like Phoenix is to understand what you've got. So what we have had to do is meticulously go through and list all the bad things that can happen, and one by one, try to hammer them down to naught.
Engineers know the EDL sequence is where Mars Polar Lander went horribly wrong. They investigate all the possible culprits, the radar, the parachute, and the thrusters. They start with one of the prime suspects from the '99 crash, the radar.
So the radar has to tell you as you're coming down where Mars is. The radar's problem fundamentally stemmed from the fact that it was designed to operate in an airplane on Earth.
Lifted from an F-16 fighter jet, the Phoenix radar is not designed to guide a landing on another planet. Mars conditions differ greatly from those on Earth, which could lead the radar to produce false readings. To adapt the radar to land on Mars, the engineers must first understand the radar's quirks. At Edwards Air Force Base in California, they tie the radar to a helicopter and drop it from thousands of feet in the air. It's the closest simulation to a Mars environment they can find. But the test reveals some quirkiness with the radar.
Sometimes it would lock onto the wrong thing. This particular radar was derived from an airplane radar. An airplane radar wasn't used to having to distinguish between one or more objects. So when the heat shield goes off, it's possible that the radar can see the heat shield. And that could confuse it. Whock! You smash down the ground.
Sending this radar as is to Mars is not an option.
If it doesn't do exactly what you want it to, knowing what it's going to do, you can work around it and figure out a way to make it work.
The solution? Install computer software which can differentiate the Martian surface from false echoes as Phoenix descends.
I believe that we have tested it to the point where we understand all the idiosyncrasies of that radar. But I am haunted by just the peculiar nature of its behavior
The engineers on the Phoenix may never know exactly what happened to the Mars Polar Lander during its final moments, so they test the landing systems exhaustively until they're sure the Phoenix will land properly. Still, there's always a chance of the unpredictable.
Mars is another planet. We don't know it as well as we need to. There's always risk just from the unknowns at Mars itself.
Chris Lewicki has faced these unknowns. Chris must help guide Phoenix through its 7 minutes of terror to a safe landing on Mars. He is the flight systems engineer for Phoenix. Phoenix has one shot at landing on Mars, and that weight hangs on the parachute.
The next stage in slowing down is to deploy a parachute. In about 15 seconds, the parachute will take us from about 900 miles an hour to about 150 miles an hour. And we have to deploy this parachute at just the right time. The radar is a critical instrument in terms of figuring out exactly when the right point is. It's kind of like a skydiver's meter. You've got to pick just the right spot to pull that cord.
The radar must detect the correct altitude from the Martian surface and tell Phoenix when to release the parachute.
All kinds of terrible things could happen. It really is just a fabric and it's just cord, like a parachute here on Earth.
Like the radar, the engineers can't tell exactly how the parachute will work in the Martian atmosphere.
They're not exactly like they'll happen on Mars, but they really give us a lot of insight into how these very complex, large, ungainly things will perform when we actually take them to Mars.
The parachute drop test results aren't promising.
This lander actually couldn't take the force that this parachute could put on it. The jerk that it gets when it deploys is enough to potentially rip it right out. It could have been a polar lander experience all over again.
To prevent such an encore, the engineers develop a surprisingly simple solution.
And ultimately, one of the decisions that we made was to shrink the parachute just a little bit, so that we get just a little bit less of a tug on it.
As the engineers solve problems, more emerge. Phoenix must land using outdated pulse mode thrusters.
The challenge is taking these 12 pulse thrusters from several hundred feet up in the air, going 100 miles an hour or more, to just a really slow speed so that we can kind of gracefully come down and plant the landing.
Much easier said than done. And there's another thing.
Pulse mode thrusters have never been used to successfully land on Mars. Mars Polar Lander used this pulse mode technology to try and land on Mars, and it was one of the things we were kind of worried about.
In 1976, the Viking lander touched down on Mars using throttle thrusters, which employ a steady stream of fuel. These continuous thrusters succeeded. The pulse thrusters never have.
The pulse mode thrusting that we have on Phoenix is a little bit like taking your faucet and turning it on and off really fast.
Would you have designed pulse-modulated engines to land on Mars if you were not restricted in cost from the beginning? No. We took what we had. We took what was left over, and we tested it and tested it again and tested it again. We did hot fire tests on Phoenix, which were not done for the Mars Polar Lander. And now we believe we've done all the tests necessary. They should do the job.
Can Phoenix rise to the crucial challenge of entry, descent, and landing?
But you know, just because of how complex this thing is and the job that it has to do, that there's mistakes there. And you're just hoping you've caught all the major ones and that the minor ones won't matter.
As I have watched this team tackle problem after problem after problem, this team may not succeed. Phoenix may have a bad day, but this team deserves to succeed.
With Mars, there are no guarantees. The engineers are under the gun. To give Phoenix a shot at safe landing, they've worked out problems with old technology. Now time is the issue, as the launch date quickly approaches. The new challenge is to put Phoenix on a rocket and launch on time.
Getting ready for launch is always a race, and it's a race against yourself, a race against time.
Launch dates can make or break missions to the Red Planet. Earth and Mars orbits align only once every 2 years.
And if you miss that launch date, your mission is over just because the opportunities are so few and far between.
Heather Enos and her team feel the pressure more than anyone.
We were in our final testing, and the TIGA just wouldn't cooperate and wouldn't work. It put us pretty far behind.
The heart of the science mission rides on her instrument. It's designed to sniff out water and the signs of life. Phoenix can't fly without it.
It was very stressful. I mean, the team was working, 7 days a week, 16, 17-hour days. We made it, but we literally were the last payload on the spacecraft.
Under strict military security, an Air Force Globemaster airlifts the completed Phoenix from Lockheed Martin in Colorado to the launch pad at Cape Canaveral, Florida. It arrives just in time for launch. Phoenix is bolted to the Delta II rocket and set for liftoff. And then, a bad omen. As storms build over the Florida Panhandle, lightning strikes the launch pad. Phoenix catches a break. There's no harm done. NASA gives the final go-ahead just before dawn on August 4th, 2007.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Main engine start, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Delta II rocket with Phoenix, a distant science outpost seeking clues of the evolution at the polar region of Mars.
Watching the launch of Phoenix was very, very emotional. Surprisingly, I started crying during the launch. I mean, as soon as it hit the sky and it was on its way, I think it was really feeling like, okay, we're finally on our way, as well as I'm letting it go feeling. So I actually was very emotional.
It went early in the morning. The sun wasn't up yet. In the nighttime launch, it lights up the sky like a sun rising. And it felt so important to get our spacecraft properly off the Earth and get it moving towards Mars.
You ask yourself when you launch this thing and when you send it to Mars, and you're like, I hope I didn't forget anything. I hope I didn't forget to tighten that screw. I hope I didn't forget to put that piece in the software.
The engineers have done everything they can to get Phoenix safely to Mars. During the spacecraft's 10-month journey through space, the science team prepares for the real work of the Phoenix mission, the quest for life on the red planet.
We have a big stake in this mission, the possibility that habitable zones exist and maybe they're populated. All of these things rest on our one chance here to explore the polar regions.
There's no doubt if the Phoenix mission successfully detects organic signatures of any sort, it will most definitely be one of the hottest scientific debates for decades to come.
Up till now, the focus has been on landing Phoenix safely. But once it's on the surface, a whole new set of technical challenges begins.
To operate a very complicated arm from tens of millions of miles away is a very difficult task.
On the Earth, when we talk about robotics, we usually mean joysticking, where you can see what the rover sees and you can steer it. When you're on Mars, the joystick idea doesn't work, because when you send a command to the robot on Mars, it takes 15 minutes to an hour to get there.
All commands sent 50 million miles away must be carefully planned. How will Phoenix respond and work with the instructions it receives from Earth? To cut out the guesswork, the team has built an exact replica of the Phoenix. All the commands are tested here first at the University of Arizona. It's a safeguard designed to head off disaster on Mars.
Okay, this spacecraft is a bold adventurer, actually. This spacecraft is doing what I always wanted to do when I was a child, and that is fly to Mars. In order for our science team and for our operations team to be able to feel comfortable operating our spacecraft, which is now on the way to Mars, they have to have done all of their procedures before in a test bed. So everything we're going to do on Mars, we do here first. This spacecraft has all the senses that a human being has, and it's going to be our eyes, our ears, our nose and mouth, so forth on Mars. What we have is like the human. We have an arm that can reach out and grab things. It can feel the surface. The arm is being watched by our set of eyes here. This is this camera. I know the whole thing doesn't look human, but it acts human. This unit over here, the TIGA instrument, is kind of like an electronic nose. Like you might crush leaves from a plant to get a good sniff. It actually heats it, and then it can smell the vapors coming up. And over here is our weather sensor, and it can understand what the environment is like. So we sense and feel the environment on Mars just like a human would. And even though you and I can't go there, we can send this robot there to tell us exactly what it's like.
But it's all theory until Phoenix faces the reality of Mars.
If we land safe and we're never able to figure out how to get the arm to bring a sample and put it in the camera, we'll be laughed at. We'll be on Jay Leno.
Landing day.
Well, one thing we know from the orbital.
After 10 months in space, Phoenix is just hours away from its encounter with Mars.
I am actually really scared.
In Tucson, Heather Enos heads to the University of Arizona. She's faced this day before.
I was on the Mars Polar Lander team in 1999. I was at the University of Arizona listening live for the feed of a positive confirmation of a landing, and we'd never got it. That was probably one of the worst days of my life, and I certainly wouldn't want to repeat it.
Heather, along with most of the Phoenix team, will watch the landing from the university's Science Operations Center.
I've kind of gone full circle today. I'm scared.
Chris Lewicki is going to Denver, Colorado. He'll be watching the landing with the team at Lockheed Martin, where the Phoenix was built.
There's nothing like entry, descent, and landing. Probably go through some feelings of anxiety and worry, you know, where you think you might die while we're going through EDL. It's pretty rough. You know, this is where we're going to find out what people are made of. We're going to find out what our spacecraft is made of.
With just hours to go before Phoenix hits the Martian atmosphere, pressure mounts.
We sent the last commands to the spacecraft this morning, set in the final configuration and everything for entry, descent, and landing, and it's on its own.
Now Phoenix will face its fate alone. Because of the time delay between Earth and Mars, the engineers are now hands-off.
And the hands will get clammy, nerves will start shaking.
Yeah, you can always already start to feel a little bit of tension.
Yeah.
Chief Engineer Gentry Lee is 1,000 miles away at the Center of Operations at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California.
There we go.
He'll watch from here.
Imagine working on this job for 4 years, and now, today, in 3 hours, you're going to find out whether or not you did it all right.
Almost there.
Almost there, one way or another. And all we can do is sit and wait and hope. It is drama of the highest kind.
Just want to wish you Connor good luck. Thank you, Steve. Godspeed, man.
All eyes are on Peter Smith, the man in charge of the mission.
It's been a long time waiting for this moment. I feel like my heart's on the spacecraft, and we're just ready for the excitement to start.
In just minutes, Peter will enter NASA's Mission Control in Pasadena.
Of course, the actual descent may be a little different than our animation. I hope not, but it might be. When we come out, we'll be safely on Mars. Hope so.
As Peter heads into Mission Control, he prepares himself for the moment of truth.
We just got to wait to see what the dice will give us.
Hello, how are you?
All the teams in Tucson and Denver watch with Peter via satellite as data comes back from Mars.
We're getting very close to entry.
Atmospheric entry on my mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are in the 7 minutes terror right now.
So we have now entered the atmosphere and are starting to slow down. As the atmosphere gets thicker and thicker, the heat shield will get hotter and hotter.
It's basically on fire. All right, parachute next.
At this point in time, Phoenix will have normally deployed its parachute, standing by for telemetry acquisition. Parachute detected.
All right, parachutes deployed. Beautiful. More.
We have data lockup. Heat shield trigger detected. Ground relative velocity 90 meters per second.
It's getting exciting.
Radar reliable. Altitude convergence detected. Altitude 1800 meters, 1700 meters, 1600 meters. Standing by for landed separation, altitude 1100 meters. Signal may drop out during landed separation. Altitude 1000 meters. The separation detected. We have reapplied the signal, gravity turn detected. Altitude 600 meters, 500 meters, 400 meters, 250 meters, 150 meters, 100 meters, 80 meters, 50 meters. Constant velocity phase detected. Altitude 40 meters, 30 meters, 27 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters, standing by for touchdown. Touchdown signal detected. Sequence initiated. Helium vent detected.
Can you believe it? We're there. We're actually landed and we're safe.
Everything went off without a hitch. It was. Yeah, I don't think it could have gone better. Yeah.
Oh my God. And I'm thrilled. I'm really, really, really excited.
Just perfect. Just perfect. Well, I feel on top of the world.
Peter is on his way to the press conference to announce the good news to the world.
It was flawless. Did you see that, Steve? Did you guys see it? Did you see it? Unbelievable. Wow. Fabulous.
Tell us your goal for the Phoenix now.
Get some pictures back. We want to see Mars.
Phoenix has landed, but did it survive with all systems intact?
Deploying the solar arrays, deploying the payloads, taking the first images, that'll be the next exciting saga in the story.
Phoenix is not out of the woods yet. Phoenix is on the surface of Mars, but it's not safe yet. The Martian Arctic could freeze the robot.
We're going to go down and confirm that the spacecraft is ready to survive safely through the night and that we can support science operations tomorrow. So we've got a big night ahead of us.
Its solar panels must unfold to power and heat the machine. It's up to Chris to make sure the power turns on.
Will be a person, if you're looking around the room, who does not yet look relieved, because there's still a lot of things that have to happen. We have to deploy solar arrays so that we don't die the first night.
The team eagerly waits for the next transmission from Mars.
That means 7 minutes from now, we will start receiving our first downlink from the surface.
They brace themselves for the worst. Chris has prepared an emergency protocol in case things go horribly wrong. But if Phoenix receives power, its instruments should work, and images will tell the story.
Are you practicing?
We're so excited. We're seeing pictures now of the solar arrays fully deployed. We've got a mission. So, where are we at?
Supposed to happen. Both solar arrays are latched, our batteries are fully charged.
It's just plain, it's plain perfect, isn't it? It's just plain perfect.
Welcome to Mars.
And as for those emergency protocols...
And as you can see from the images, these procedures are clearly not necessary. So now we're going to rip them. Maybe we'll take them out in the parking lot and burn them. Put some muscle in the tin. Ah, yeah. Does it feel good? Yes. Yeah, keep going, guys. There, PI 1216. Right there. There's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
Just as satisfying.
Burn it.
Congratulations.
Phoenix has survived the landing and now joins the operational fleet of spacecraft exploring Mars. The Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter passes overhead and captures this historic photograph of Phoenix landing on the red planet. Safely on the surface, the Phoenix camera documents its triumphant touchdown. And the first images ever from the surface of the Martian Arctic. As the photos from Mars fascinate the world, Peter returns home to the University of Arizona.
It doesn't get better than this. And this is such a fulfilling feeling after 6 years of thinking about this project. I'm able to head home to the Operations Center, symbolically bringing the keys to the spacecraft with me so that our science team can now start their science mission. If we can actually find some organic materials and believe they're from Mars, that's going to change everything. You watch. I feel like I don't need shoes anymore. I'm floating on air, so it's just, we got the science of our dreams laid out in front of us. We got a spacecraft with a science laboratory on Mars. Now the baton is passed to the science team.
The science team needs to move quickly. In just 90 Martian days, the sun will begin to disappear from the North Pole, abandoning Phoenix to the Arctic freeze.
What do you see in this trace here?
Peter Smith and his team have overcome the odds. Now Phoenix is poised to make discoveries that could shift our understanding of life itself.